Cassidy, and Hammy, and Crystal, the Board Game Blitzers, showing your favorite games.
To kick things off for this set of 10, my number 40 is Red 7. In Red 7, all players have to do is be winning the game at the end of their turn. Sounds pretty simple. The way players do this is by playing cards either to their area in front of them or to the middle of the table. And when you play a card to the middle of the table, you are changing the win condition of the game. So for instance, all of the cards have colors and numbers on them, the 7 colors of the rainbow, and 1 to 7. So 7 is the highest number available. So if you play a red card to the center of the table, the rule for red is you must have the highest card on the table. So if you have a 7 sitting in front of you, you're winning the game. So you play red to the middle of the table and play passes to the left. Then that player maybe doesn't have a 7 in front of them, so they have to change the rule to something else. So maybe they have a 2 and a 6 sitting in front of them, so they might change the rule in the center of the table to have the most even cards in front of them. And so on and so forth. The game is really, really quick, and the cards are pretty because they're rainbow colored, and I really enjoy this one quite a bit. So it's a small box card game that I love, and that's why it's my number 40, Red 7. My number 39 is Word Slam. Word Slam is a party game where 2 teams of players compete against one another to try and guess the secret word or phrase first. Both teams are trying to guess the same phrase at the same time. Each team has a clue giver that isn't allowed to speak out loud, but is allowed to use cards of differing types, nouns, adjectives, verbs, things like that, and they're going to line them all up on these trays in front of themselves, facing their teammates behind them, trying to get them to guess the word. It sounds kind of boring when you describe it, but this game is always raucous, really good fun, and it's often crazy because you can hear the other team responding to the clues they're being given. They're trying to talk it out and figure out what the answer is, so you might be able to utilize the other team's information to help you figure out yours, because inevitably the clue givers are often going to go different routes to try and describe the thing. I've also seen people use the cards, like physically manipulate the cards to try and help give clues, and that always gets really silly and fun as well. And when I say word, you say slam. Word! Yeah, no, okay. It doesn't work in video format, does it? I don't know. But I love Word Slam. It's so much fun. It's a great party game. It's great at conventions. You can get a giant crowd of people all playing together, and that's why it is my number 39, Word Slam. My number 38 is Arcadia Quest. In Arcadia Quest, each player controls a guild of heroes that are going out adventuring, trying to complete specific quests, and kill monsters and attack the other players. So I don't usually like games where the players are attacking one another directly. There are some notable exceptions to that, of course, but Arcadia Quest does it in a really interesting way, and since there are other monsters that you're fighting as well, it doesn't feel purely antagonistic. The base game of this and the subsequent expansions that have come out each have a campaign of scenarios you can play through where you are building up your guild of characters and you're giving them new items, and sometimes they get bad things, which are curses that negate some of their special abilities. But this game is really, really fun. There's a lot of dice rolling in it, but I love it anyway. I mean, come on, I do love dice. So Arcadia Quest is great. I played through the entire campaign of the base game, but I haven't played through any of the expansion content yet. I do really want to try out the Arcadia Quest Pets expansion, because then you have little pets that go around with your guild members. And I know that they're also soon going to be doing a Kickstarter for the the Riders expansion, where you have big giant things that your characters can ride on. By the time this video comes out, I think that might have actually already happened, but I'm not sure. I know it's coming in 2018, so there's new content all the time for this game, and it's a lot of fun. So that is why it is my number 38, Arcadia Quest. My number 37 is Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. So in Mansions of Madness, you are it's a cooperative game where players are all adventurers going through a spooky scenario set in the Lovecraftian Cthulhu universe. And while Lovecraft himself was problematic, the stories he wrote were interesting, and I do like games with Cthulhu settings, assuming that they're handled well. So what's neat about this game, it is actually app-driven. So you're building a board of tiles and you're going through and exploring them, but anytime bad guys pop up or you encounter NPCs, it's all handled through the app. So you tap on specific items that you want to interact with on the board via the app, and it tells you what happens with them. It'll also help spawn monsters, it'll help you keep track of damage to specific monsters, and it'll help you build the building that you're in tile by tile as you explore it. So there's none of this, you see the whole layout before you get there, which doesn't make any sense. If you were actually exploring a new building, you wouldn't know what was around the corner until you got there. So I love the app integration in this game. The theme is great, the scenarios are tough but winnable, and the characters are all very interesting. There's a lot of different characters you can choose from too. So I really like this game quite a bit, and that is why it is my number 37, Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. My number 36 is Herbaceous. In Herbaceous, all of the players are trying to plant an herb garden by collecting cards of different types of herbs. On a player's turn, they will draw a card from the deck and choose whether to put it into the public garden that is available to all of the players or their private garden. They're going to draw 2 different cards, and each card must go in a different spot. So if you put the first card in your private garden, the second card has to go in your public garden, and so on and so forth. Basically, this game moves really, really quickly, and players then at the beginning of their turn are also able to pot a set of herbs. This is a set collection game where you're trying to get different sets of different types of herbs depending on the pot you're putting them in. So one of the pots wants a lot of a single type of herb. A different pot wants pairs of different types of herbs, and another pot wants one single herb of a bunch of different types. Once you put herbs into one of your pots, you can never add to it. So it's kind of a little bit push your luck in that there's cards out in the public garden that are available to everyone, and if you don't take herbs at a specific turn, then maybe one of the other players will take some of the cards that you want before it gets around to your next turn. The game moves really quickly, and the artwork, which is by Beth Sobel, is so lovely. I just adore this game so much. I like it quite a bit, and that is why it is my number 36. Herbaceous. My number 35 is Exit the Game. So Exit the Game is a series of escape room in a box games, and I'm including all of them together as a single entry on this list, although I actually haven't played all of the available ones, but I've played a few of them and I really like them. So in Exit the Game, you are simulating the experience of an escape room in a box. It gives you a number of puzzles to solve and things to do, and unlike some of the other escape room in a box style games, this game is consumable. So once you have done a scenario, you can't pass it on to somebody else to do. You have to potentially rip, tear, fold, or manipulate pieces in the box to complete the puzzles. This is actually my favorite of all of the escape game series for that reason, because I think having you manipulate the pieces in those ways makes for more interesting puzzles, and I've really loved the ones that I've played through this series. So if you like escape rooms or escape room style games and you haven't tried Exit the Game, this is definitely one you need to check out, and that is why it is my number 35. Exit the Game. My number 34 is Balderdash, or Beyond Balderdash. The game has changed names and evolved over the course of the years. So in Balderdash, it is a party-style bluffing game where players are given a prompt and have to write down information based on that prompt, but try to make the information seem as realistic as possible. So for instance, players might be given a word, a really random, weird, obscure word, and they have to make up the definition to that word, or something that they think would be the definition to it. Or they might be given an acronym of specific letters, and then they have to make up what those letters stand for. Or they might be given the name of an obscure movie, and they have to write down what the plot of that movie is. So the correct answer will also be written down in all of these instances, and then all of the pieces of paper will be collected and read out loud, and players have to guess which answer they think is the real answer. And you'd be surprised, if you play this game with some creative people, it's really hard sometimes to figure out what the correct answer is, and you'll often guess other people's answers. They get points if you guess their answer, and you get points if you guess the correct answer. But we were playing this when I was little, and a word came up. I don't remember what the word was, but I wrote down as the definition on my sheet something along the lines of your brother's mother's cousin's first uncle, you know, half removed or whatever. Like, I made up a bunch of stuff relating to a distant relative, essentially. And some of the things I just said right now weren't even real, but that's probably what I wrote when I was a kid. So then we collected all the answers, and the person started to read them off, and their eyes got really wide because they read my answer and then they kept going, and they read another answer, and the other answer was nearly identical. It was different forms of relation, but it was essentially a long string of, you know, your nephew's cousin's brother's mother first, you know, once removed. It was something very similar but different, and everybody was kind of taken aback because it didn't seem like an obvious choice. And as it turns out, that was the real answer, and mine was really similar to it. I didn't know the word, I didn't know the definition, and everybody was kind of blown away that I got so close to the real answer with mine without knowing it. So it was a really memorable moment in my young gaming career, and it's part of the reason why Balderdash holds a special place in my heart, aside from the fact that it's a really great party game. So that is why it is my number 34, Balderdash. My number 33 is Azul. Azul is an abstract game where players are drafting different colored tiles from the center of the table to put onto their player boards. And the different numbers of tiles and different types of tiles you take determine how you will score. So each round, each row that you filled up, and each row has a different number of tiles that can be placed on it, but for the ones that you filled up, tiles shift over into your main board and then will score based on how many tiles they are adjacent to in their row and column respectively. Then at the end of the game, you score bonus points for having collected like filled up an entire column or an entire row, or collected all 5 of a specific color tile for each row of your board. It's a little hard to explain without visuals, but it's really, really great, and I love it quite a bit. It can be a little bit mean because when you're drafting tiles, you'll often know what tiles some of your opponents are going to want, and you might take those instead of them, which can be, you know, a little cruel, but it's fun. I like it a lot, and that is why it is my number 33, Azul. My number 32 is Qwixx. Qwixx is a roll and write game where players are rolling dice and marking off numbers on their sheet in a specific order. So on a player's turn, they roll 6 dice, 4 colored dice and 2 white dice. Every player at the table is able to take the sum of the 2 white dice and mark it off on their sheet if they so choose. Then the active player also has the opportunity to utilize a combination of a white die and one of the colored dice to mark off a spot on their sheet. So as the active player, you can potentially mark off 2, everyone else gets to mark off potentially 1. But the trick is that the numbers in each row of the sheet, red, blue, green, and yellow respectively, are numbered in order either from 2 to 12 or 12 to 2. And once you mark off a number, all of the numbers to the left of it can no longer be marked off. So you're trying to determine when you should mark off numbers based on what you think is going to get rolled in the future. Because if you limit yourself too much, you won't be able to score enough points, or in subsequent turns you might have no numbers that you can mark off and then you have to take a penalty. This game is really easy to teach, and it's really easy to play, and it's fun, and you're engaged on every player's turn, so there isn't a lot of downtime, and it also comes in a really small box, so it's easy to travel with and play just about anywhere. I really like it, and that is why it is my number 32. Qwixx. My number 31 is Betrayal at House on the Hill. I'm actually kind of surprised that this one ended up so high on my list because I actually have a number of issues with the game. But I also have a lot of nostalgia love for it because it is one of the first modern board games I ever played back in 2007. So in Betrayal at House on the Hill, players take on the roles of different characters exploring a haunted mansion, and they will discover new rooms and increase their stats and abilities through different means. They'll collect items that are on cards, and then eventually, as the result of a die roll that happens at random throughout the course of the game when different specific types of cards are revealed, the haunt will start. And this is when things get interesting. Once the haunt starts, usually one of the players at the table will transform into the traitor, and they are now the bad guy. There are some scenarios where there is no bad guy, or there's some other things, but usually it's one versus the rest of the group at that point. And then the traitor gets to go read a specific book with information that's secret to them, and they go off on their own, and everybody else reads a different book with information about the scenario that's specific to them. And both sides will have a specific goal that they're trying to achieve to win the game. There are 50 different haunts listed in the base game book, and they're all pretty different. Some of them are really unbalanced, especially based on how the layout of the house was built during the course of the game. Some of them, the rules aren't super clear as to what either the bad guy or the good guys need to do. So there's problems all over the board, literally, in some of these haunts. But the game is a lot of fun, and it's kind of like every, you know, B-movie, horror movie ever made, all crammed into a single box. I have the expansion, the Widow's Walk expansion, and I was hoping it would kind of fix some of the problems in the base game, and it didn't really do that. I have not played the newer version, Betrayal at Baldur's Gate, but I am really looking forward to the new Betrayal Legacy game that's coming out later in 2018. So I have high hopes for it, although I'm, you know, trying to not get my hopes up too high because Betrayal has issues. Maybe Betrayal Legacy will be awesome and perfect. I don't know. I love horror board games, and this one is a great one, even for all its flaws. So that is why it is my number 31, Betrayal at House on the Hill.